relationship specialist. I'd like to welcome you to Love, Listen, Talk, Repeat, a podcast that talks all about relationships. They come in all shapes and sizes, and each one's unique. So in this podcast, I chat with guests about life events and issues that can affect relationships, as well as discussing different types of relationships that may not always fit the mould of being mainstream. There will also be some episodes where it's just me talking about something that may be helpful in your relationship. So for now, just sit back and enjoy. Hello, and it's Wendy again, and today I'm going to be talking to Sue Winsbury. She's a women's empowerment coach and spiritual mentor. So I'm going to hand over to Sue. So please tell us all about yourself, and we want to know what that all means and what you do.
Thank you, Wendy, and hello. So I've had an interesting journey, and I'll start way back when I was sort of in my teens, and I was very interested in spirituality and energy and reflexology and all that kind of thing. But I didn't have anyone to share it with. I wasn't in what I would call a spiritual family. So I was very much on my own, and it just gradually ebbed away from me because I didn't know where to go with it. I didn't know what to do. So I let it go, and I sort of conformed to the mainstream, as you do, or as much as you can possibly do when you're a slightly rebellious teenager anyway. And I ended up working in PR and marketing and mail order. But I always felt very uncomfortable in myself. So I never felt that I fitted in with those environments. I had one little temping stint in a big corporate organisation, but that really wasn't me. So I've always erred towards smaller businesses, but I still didn't feel like I fitted in, and I could never pinpoint what it was. I actually just thought there was something wrong with me, or people didn't like me, or I was, it was me. And it wasn't until after I was very lucky that when I had my children, I could give up work and be a full-time mum. And I'm always very thankful that I had that privilege. And I saw an advertisement, and it was very random, for a course on spiritual healing.
Okay.
And that kind of thought, actually, this is igniting something that was sort of there a long time ago. And I decided I didn't know if it worked or not. So the only way to find out was to go and train and see what happens. And I found I could do it. And in fact, anyone can do it when they tap into it and know how. And that really sent me on a completely different journey of holistic therapies, energy work, and it's evolved into all the things that I do now. I always find it fascinating that we start on a path and it's not always the right one.
Right.
And sometimes we get diverted intentionally or unintentionally. And I think for a lot of us, we have something deep inside that we are meant to be doing, but it took me half my lifetime to work out what it was.
Luckily you did.
Luckily I did, yes. So the healing then went on into lots of holistic therapies, very much hands-on things, but then that's all working with energy. And then I did my Reiki because I wanted to compare that to my previous healing course. And then I went into coaching and women's empowerment. And part of my story, I guess, is why I'm very passionate about women's empowerment.
Right. So when you talk about spiritual healing, can you tell us a bit more about that? Because I guess there are all kinds of spiritual healing.
There are different, yes, lots of different modalities of healing. And I think some people, when they hear the word spiritual healing, think that you have to have a belief in God, or for some people they'll think it's anti-religion, but to me it's all about just using the energy of the universe, and we're all surrounded by energy, and Reiki uses energy, and as a healer or an energy practitioner, you are just tapping into what is out there, and whoever you're treating, they are just, their body is doing with it whatever they need to. So I don't do the healing. I'm just like a transmission body, a vehicle.
Okay, yeah, that explains it a little bit more, because I think, as you say, some people believe when you use the word spiritual, they relate it to religion, and I guess there are spiritual healers who do work in that way. So I was just more curious about how you worked. So okay, so that sounds really interesting, because you've done quite a lot of different things, haven't you? And it's led you to being a women's empowerment coach. And what does that mean? Tell us more about that side of it.
So for me, women's empowerment coaching is helping women really step into their own confidence, step into being proud and strong enough to be who they are deep down. And that can be getting to know themselves, because I think as women particularly, we're pretty good at losing who we are. So it's helping women understand who they are, helping them with inner confidence, self-belief, self-esteem, assertion, learning how not to be people pleasers.
Yeah, definitely. And all those things were resounding with me, not from just from my own experience, but also with clients I work with. I always say that, especially when you're a mom, I say that once you've delivered the baby and the placenta, there's a whole big package of guilt that gets delivered as well. And then you also become, you can lose yourself so easily, because you are someone's wife, or partner, or someone's mom, and everybody else seems to come before us. And I think we lose ourselves.
Yeah, I think we're almost pre-programmed to put ourselves at the bottom of the pile.
Yeah.
And we look after everybody else's needs, wants, desires, happiness. We feel all that responsibility for everyone. And then sometimes we might think about ourselves at the end of it, and quite often not at all. We just forget to look after ourselves.
Yeah, I would agree. And if we can't look after ourselves first, we can't look after anybody else. And that's one thing we really have to encourage. I encourage my clients, I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah, I always say you can't pour from an empty cup. You've got to fill up your own cup first.
Yeah.
And that self-care is not selfish.
No, it's not. Selfish is about doing things for yourself where others suffer. So in other words, you're putting somebody else is suffering because of the way you're behaving, where self-care isn't. That's fundamental, as you say. That's my view anyway.
No, I totally agree. It's for me, it's a basic requirement, but something that a lot of us have to learn.
We do, don't we?
Yeah.
I think because we're always told, as children, don't be selfish. That's the first thing we get told, isn't it? You've got to share your toys. You've got to look after somebody else. You've got to, and I think often children can be told, well, you've got to look after your younger brother or sister, or your mum or your dad or your grandma. There's a lot of responsibility put on us as children, and I think it starts there.
Yeah, I think it starts from very early on, and also watching, how our mums behave. And my mum would always have the smallest piece of meat or whatever, or the burnt bit, and I do that with my own kids as well. If I've burnt something in the oven, I will always have the burny bit and give them the best bit.
Yeah, what does that say? What does that teach them as well? Yeah, it does. So what would you say are the key elements of that self-love and that self-care?
So for me, first and foremost, I would say getting to know what your values are and learning how to really honor those and build them into your daily life. Because I know, gosh, for years and years, I didn't know what my values were. I hadn't even heard of the concept. You know, I was just kind of bumbling along, being a mum, being a wife, doing my thing.
Yeah.
And suddenly sort of the concept, in fact, it was when my marriage was breaking down that we started looking at values. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know what these things are.
Right.
And I think when you learn to understand what those are, and they are kind of your core beliefs, they're at the very heart of you. And
Definitely.
when we don't honor them, then we're not feeling good in ourselves to begin with.
I so agree with you. And I know that when I ask people, well, what are your core beliefs and values? They look at me blankly as if I don't know what you're talking about. But I really believe, I think we know them, but we just can't put them into words sometimes. It's formulating them, isn't it? It is,
Yeah.
well, yes, I really believe in honesty and truth, or I believe, we should care for our planet, or whatever a myriad of different things that they can be, our integrity, our everything that makes us the person we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just when you start thinking about them and what is it that's important to me in my life? People don't stop and think about it. As you say, they bumble along. And I did the same for so many years. I knew deep down what was important for me, but I'd never actually formulated it or really sat and thought about it.
Yeah. Consciously thinking and then yeah, thinking about how we're actually respecting those values and honoring them in our day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And I was working with a client who's in a very, very unhappy, very difficult marriage, and we were working through her values. And it was a fascinating process. And one of them that came up was actually God. And when she was growing up, she'd been involved in a church, so she'd had a lovely sense of community and support and love and care and all that kind of what I would call soul nurture.
Yeah.
And she's married to what can probably be described as a very narcissistic kind of man. Doesn't believe in religion.
Mm.
She wasn't allowed to have her children christened. Um, and it was only sort of when we went through this, and she suddenly looked and she went, "Oh my goodness!" And I said, "Well, where is God in your life at the moment?" She's just like, well, it's not really featuring. And then she started to realize how she missed that community of like-minded people. And so we could start to put things in place for her to experience that in her current life, but she hadn't realized what a big part of her it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And I certainly believe in the fact that, when I'm working with couples or individuals about their relationship, what are your core beliefs and values, and what are your partners, and how much in line are they? Because as you said, that was so illustrative of the being completely with your client, with it being completely out of alignment. And some things we can cope with as long as an acceptance, if her partner had allowed or accepted and that side of her, but if it's not, then it causes very, very upset and so much friction in relationship.
Yeah, totally. And that deep unhappiness that sort of needs to be resolved somehow or another.
Yeah. I'm glad she found what she needed.
Yeah, there's still things for her to work on, but piece by piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes people they expect overnight results, and they think it's all going to happen overnight, and it doesn't, does it? Because we're programmed, and therefore to kind of get in alignment again, realigned again. Sorry, it takes a while, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's not a click your fingers and it's all done the next day.
No. So you talked about the fact that your relationship broke down.
Yeah.
With reference to it.
Yeah.
So what happened to you in that?
So I over the course, I was with my husband for 16 years altogether.
Right.
And I just gradually lost all sense of who I really was. I was never a particularly confident teen or 20-something. And my husband was a very, very gregarious, very outgoing, party-loving, very, very social person. And you know, he had a big personality. And I guess I just went into the shadows even more than I had been, because he had such this huge fun personality, and we had a lot of great times. We had a lot of great parties. We had a fantastic social life. So there were many, many pluses. But I also, looking back, I began to shrink.
Oh, really?
Behind that hugeness. And it was something that I didn't even see happening at the time. I always think it's a bit like a drip feed, is that it's such a slow erosion that you don't particularly notice it. And every so often something would kind of pop up in me and think, oh, what's happening to me? But it wasn't enough in my awareness to do anything about it.
Oh, that's such a shame, because actually the two of you complemented each other. And if only it had been in both your awareness, and you could have, acknowledged it, had been aware and supported and helped each other, how brilliant that would have been.
Yeah, I think unfortunately we went the other way. So he got probably more frustrated with my shrinking, and so in his trying to help things, I felt it as pressure.
Yeah.
And control and force. So then I would retreat even further, and he would then try and force things more. And so we just kind of we went in the wrong directions.
Yeah, locking horns instead of being supportive. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you really lost your sense of self. What did it feel like when you realised all of that?
I felt very empty, emotionally numb. So I kind of had forgotten how to feel things, and that was, I get the highs as well as the lows, because I think I just kind of shut off from everything. So if you don't feel things, then you don't feel pain. Yeah. So there was an emotional shutdown, and I was also a little bit annoyed with myself for letting it happen, because I have to take responsibility as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of when I started to wake up to what had happened, I was a bit frustrated with myself that I'd even allowed that to go on.
Yeah, and I think there is something, isn't there, about that when we come to that realization that we played a part in it. To start with, it's so easy to blame the other person totally. I know I've done that myself. But then when you've had time to percolate all those feelings, and then you realize, well, actually, what part did I play in that?
Yeah.
So yeah,
and I did play a part,
and it's quite a wake up call, isn't it?
It's a little bit of a oops.
Yeah, and not easy to acknowledge when it first happens, because I think I've done it myself, and it's also easy I see it with others, they immediately say, well, it was them, it was all their fault. They're the ones to blame, they were awful, but actually they don't recognise that none of us recognise it immediately, do we? It takes a little
No.
while, and takes some humility to go, ouch, yes.
I think the blame game is so much easier. It's much,
Isn't it?
much simpler. Just heap the responsibility on somebody else and, walk away. It wasn't me, it was them. But there's always two parts to it.
Yeah.
And, I think my ex-husband, he's recognised his role as well. And we are still amicable.
Oh, how lovely is that? Because that doesn't happen very often.
No, we worked very hard at maintaining a good relationship because we had young children. It was really important, and we both came from divorced families ourselves. So we knew how, for us, it was essential that we maintain that relationship.
Yeah.
Not saying it was easy at all times, but
Well, but life isn't easy, is it? I mean, let's face it. People think that when they first meet and get together, it's all going to be champagne and roses, and unfortunately, that's not how life is.
No.
So therefore, parting from a relationship is not going to be easy either. So well done you though for working through it, because that takes a lot of energy, which you work with, which is brilliant, and self-acknowledgement. So that's great to hear that lovely story instead of the ones I often hear where they just can't bear the sight of each other and everybody suffers.
Could easily have gone that way. It was a bit of a tightrope at times, but and I'm proud of what we've managed.
You should be. I think you should be very proud of yourselves. Yeah. So how much of, going back to the self-love, how much of that is important in a relationship? Because I got the sense that when you talked, you'd as losing yourself, maybe you just didn't even know about loving yourself. It didn't come into the equation.
No, and I don't think I even really like myself.
Really?
No, and I think when I was growing up, because I was not terribly confident, and because I always felt like I was a bit of an outsider, I don't think I liked myself growing up.
Okay.
So it was just sort of, and that's quite hard when you don't like yourself. And I think there's a lot of people that feel that way but don't know that's how they feel.
Yeah.
So learning to like and then love myself was a big part of my healing process.
Yes. And I think that when we get those negative messages coming through as children, whether it's from parents, siblings, friends, teachers, wherever, authorities, whoever, it's hard then to begin to like ourselves, because I grew up feeling not good enough. And therefore I didn't fit in. I didn't like myself particularly. And it took me a long time to say, well, actually, I am good enough. I am okay. And then there was acceptance, and then you have to move on to the self-love. I think it's that journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
Going through it.
And I think that sense of not good enough, I see in so many women that I work with, and even sort of just from things that I do sort of in my marketing and comments, and just the number of people that kind of go, I know I'm not good enough, or I don't feel good enough. And it's epidemic.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with you.
Sadly.
Yeah, it's very sad, isn't it? That so many people feel that way, that they just don't match up to external forces, because that's what it is. It's living up to those shoulds, musts and oughts. I mean, they're three words I'd love to ban from the English language.
I agree.
When I rule the world, I'm going to ban them.
There will be no shoulds.
I think it's much nicer to say want and need and would like, rather than that critical parent inside our head.
Well, they're loaded words. They all come with pressure, don't they?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that, yeah, they're going to put us down from the start because we're going to fail. We should have done that. Oh, right. And I haven't. Now I'm a failure.
And I think I was listening to someone the other day, and they were saying that when we're at school, I think so much of this comes from being at school, because it's, you're good or you're bad.
Yeah.
You pass or you fail.
Yeah.
You succeed or you don't. It's very, very black and white.
And what do we succeed at or fail at?
Well, exactly.
If you're not academic, well, you're not academic, but it doesn't mean you're a failure in life.
No, and we need, you will be amazing at something else, and we all have our own strengths and weaknesses. And my drawing is probably at the level of a 5-year-old. I can't catch a ball, but I can do other things.
Exactly. And I think that's the problem, isn't it? You're told, as you said, at school, you're a failure. If you don't pass the exam, you're a failure. But whose standards are they? Exactly, isn't it?
Yeah. And we're all individual beings, and I think the more we learn to embrace that, then the happier everybody can be.
Yeah. So that's obviously what you help, and you, by empowering these women that you work with.
It's my aim to help women understand that they are unique and perfect in their uniqueness, and we're all to just be authentic.
Yes.
Because that's what we all need, and it's not about pretending to be somebody else. And I've pretended, and I've shown up as somebody else, trying to fit in or mold myself to different environments, and we don't feel comfortable when we do that.
No, because we don't know who we are when we're trying to be what we think others want us to be. Well, we're, as you say, not being authentic, but we lose ourselves entirely.
Yeah.
So when we try to be what we think we should be as a wife, as a partner, as a friend, as a mother, as an employee, but we're not being ourselves. And then therefore we don't know who we are, and how can we then fit into what we want to be within those relationships.
Yeah. And we get so busy molding ourselves into what we think everybody's expecting that we get lost.
Yes. And I can remember when I was a lot younger being criticised. Somebody said, "Stop trying so hard." And I felt really put down. I'm just trying to do what I think that person wants of me. It was in a job situation, it was in a work situation. And I couldn't understand what they meant. They said, you're trying too hard, stop trying too hard. Well, what does that mean? And it wasn't a good enough relationship to ask that person. But then I remember some time later, I was in the company of somebody who was a complete people pleaser. And you could see that they felt so anxious and uncomfortable and just didn't know who they were. They were just trying to please. And I felt absolutely, really so uncomfortable in their company. And it was that point I realised what I'd been doing. But I hadn't realised the effect it had on other people.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
And that was really, really interesting.
And I do think, because a lot of my clients are people pleasers, and that's how it boils down to self-esteem.
Yeah.
But also we disempower other people when we're trying to please them, because we think we're doing it to help them or to do the right thing, but actually we are taking away their own power.
Yeah. I felt all at sea with this particular person. I just felt completely uncomfortable, and I didn't know where to go. And it was And it wasn't me being the people pleaser, it was on the receiving end. It was, this feels really awful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting, isn't it, when you're both sat on both sides? But
Yes.
I think you have to maybe experience that to understand it a little bit more, what it's like when we do try and please others. Because, yeah, in relationships, how on earth can we make a successful relationship if we're trying to be what we think the other person wants us to be?
Yeah. And I think it's also important to recognise that there's a difference between being a people pleaser, but also wanting to please your partner in a more gracious sense, in a more partnership sense.
Yeah.
They're two completely different things.
Absolutely. I think it's something about giving and being from an authentic point of view. I love this person, therefore I want to do that for them, because it's putting something into the relationship and enriching it, rather than, well, I better do this because it will make them feel happier about it. And I can remember that in a relationship where I felt so controlled. I was constantly walking on eggshells and trying to do the right thing so that they would stop bullying me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that becomes, I've done the same, and it becomes very uncomfortable, and not great for the other person.
No, because they're never going to be satisfied. They're all at sea because although I don't think they understand necessarily, it's not in their awareness, but for somehow it's like their foundations aren't solid, because they're, well, why are they doing that? Or I haven't got enough, or what is it? I know it's a very different feeling, but definitely they buy into it as well, don't they? And
yeah.
Therefore you can never please them, and they're never going to be satisfied. Very, very toxic.
Very toxic.
So what do you see as where's the place for energy within a relationship?
So energy, to me, plays a huge part in relationships. And we all have, our hearts radiate an electromagnetic field. So this is a sciencey bit. It's not just woo woo. A lot of people think, oh, it's just a bit of spiritual woo, but it's a proven science. We have this energy field that comes out from our hearts, and it can extend up to 20 feet, which I think is about 8 meters. So it's huge.
Yeah.
And so obviously we're all interacting with everybody else's heart energy all the time. And I see a lot of people who are when they're in difficult relationships, the energy that they are taking into that is almost quite prickly and spiky, because they're going in with, he's not doing this for me, or she's not meeting my needs, or oh, I don't like it when they do that, or I don't even like them. Sometimes it can be at that stage, or they're really winding me up. All these negative thoughts that we take in, but it almost makes that energy very, very prickly and spiky. So the other person is sensing on this subconscious level this prickly, spiky kind of energy, and then they're reacting to it. So energetically, we are just butting up against each other and reacting in a very negative state. And the other sort of element of that is that we all, because we are all made of energy, we are just energy particles. Everything is made of energy, and we all have a different energetic vibration. And the more negative emotions tend to keep us on a lower vibration. So things like hatred, jealousy, anger, frustration, all of those, what I would call negative emotions, are quite a low vibration. So we're taking in that whole energy field of, I call it dark energy, murky energy, into our relationships. And it can be, whether it's a relationship with a partner, it can be a work relationship, with friends, it can be any kind of relationship. But people will pick up on it, but not consciously know what they're sensing. Whereas when people shift that and learn to take in a more loving energy on a very subtle way, it completely shifts the dynamics of a relationship.
Yeah. I'm very aware of energies in that respect, because if I'm in the company of somebody who has got low energy, I can actually get a sense of my heart sinking.
Yeah.
I can feel the energy lowering in the room. It really does. It becomes so heavy.
Yeah, and I'm sure, most people at some point have walked into a room, perhaps if there's been an argument that's gone on beforehand and you walk into the room and we instantly kind of go, oh, what's gone on here? Or, oh, there's a little sense of, and that's your heart energy picking up on what's going on.
And people will say, I can sense an atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I guess the atmosphere is affected, isn't it? Because we're giving it out.
All the time.
Yeah.
So I always say to people, if you're having difficulties with somebody, what energy are you taking into that in the first place?
Yeah.
Because again, it comes down to the blame and it's the other person, da-di-da-di-da, but what are we actually taking into it ourselves?
Definitely. And I think that's where it happens so easily, doesn't it? Because we sense something of somebody else, their attitude towards us, or something they've said, or the energy that they've got. We pick up on it, and then that immediately makes us step back.
Yeah.
And so then we are taking that negative energy back into the relationship.
Yeah. And then it's hard to bring the relationship back up. So even if you're working on things on a more conscious level, if you're still taking that stuff in, it's a bit of an uphill. It's an uphill bit of a battle, really, because it's got to come on two levels, I think.
Yes. So it's for us to break it, so that we accept that we've played that part in it again, isn't it? It's taking responsibility and saying, hold on a minute, we can't put this on the other person all the time. What are we taking into that conversation, into that room, into that relationship? Yeah.
And that kind of leads me on to the way that we shift that. And one of the biggest things for me is forgiveness.
Right.
And a lot of people, when I talk about forgiveness, they instantly kind of look quite affronted and will say, no, can't even entertain forgiving the other person. But for me, forgiveness is not about condoning somebody else's behavior or attitudes or anything, because when we don't forgive, we are tending to hold on to negative energy. So it may be, as a woman, I know that I'm quite good at harbouring things that happened quite a long time ago. And I think this is a pretty good female trait, that we do hang on to stuff, and we can remember arguments from probably even years ago. But if we hold on to those emotions, the only person it's actually harming is us. It's not doing anything to the other person.
No. And maybe I think sometimes people see it as forgiving the person rather than forgiving the behaviour.
Yeah, and as I said, it's
There's a
not a
difference, isn't
there
there?
is a very, very big difference, and it's not about. That's why I say it's not about not about condoning whatever's happened.
No,
It's about setting yourself free from the anger or the bitterness or
yeah,
the negative emotions that you feel about it.
yeah, yeah. I completely agree with you. And I think sometimes if we can say, well, I think what you did or your behavior, I will never forgive that, but I can forgive you as a person.
Mm,
Maybe that way round is a better way of looking at it. I
yeah,
think for me, I can do that. Okay, what you did to me, whatever your behavior was or your actions, that really wasn't acceptable. But you're a human being, and I can, accept that you are that human being, and you didn't mean it, and therefore, as a person, I can forgive you.
yeah, and it's not going to. It doesn't change
It doesn't.
anything about what's happened. For me, it's just very freeing for myself.
Yeah, letting it go.
Yeah,
Because the longer we hold on to it, the more it eats into us. And you're so right. I think this is it. Damages us more than it damages anybody else.
yeah,
And that
completely.
isn't helpful at all. So, yeah, just letting it go. Doesn't mean you can't be cross. Doesn't mean you can't be angry. Doesn't mean you don't like it. None of that, but just freeing ourselves up.
Yeah, yeah, and I know this is quite a difficult concept for people to get their heads around, particularly if they've been very badly hurt or badly treated.
Yeah,
But it's about the self rather than the other one.
yeah. Yeah, so very true. And I think there's nothing worse than that embitterment, because it just does. It destroys, and I think it manifests itself, not emotionally, but also physically.
Yeah,
People can get really suffer with all kinds of problems, emotional and physical, simply because they're harbouring that.
yeah. I mean, emotions very definitely get stuck in our bodies,
Yeah.
and anyone who's had a massage or anything like that and then burst into tears at the end of it. And I know it happened to me. And we were at a family barbecue, and my mum just walked by and gave my shoulders a little bit of a rub and a massage, because I always used to get very knotty shoulders.
Yeah.
And I suddenly burst into tears, and it wasn't just a little cry, it was monumental sobs.
Wow.
And my mum sort of said, I hurt you. And I said, no, it doesn't hurt at all. And I went into the bathroom and tried to pull myself together. And I think I sobbed for about 45 minutes.
Really?
And yeah, and that was the first time I'd really come across sort of such a release from something physical. So, um, yeah, we very much hold on to things in our physical body,
Yeah.
as well as emotionally and energetically.
Yeah. So very true. And I was going to ask you of an example of where that happened, but you've just given a personal one. So I think that's amazing that, that change in energy. But have you got any others that you wanted to share?
um, yes, I'm working with somebody at the moment, and again, it is a very toxic relationship. Um, that toxicity is very, very evident in her physical body, but she was very, very spiky whenever she talked about her husband, and some of it's justified. It's not an easy relationship, but I said, can we just sort of think about what you're taking in? You're taking that into your home, you're taking that into your relationship with your husband and with your children. And she's gradually learning how to soften it and be more compassionate, more understanding. And it is shifting the dynamics. It's not a relationship that I think is going to heal or repair, but it is, in the temporary interim, it is definitely changing how they behave towards each other. And it's very subtle, but
Mm,
even in her voice, I can hear that her voice has changed.
Okay.
Because it's softened and become more gentle, and he's responding in a more positive way towards her, and it's just because she's sort of changed. Instead of kind of, it's a bit like going in as a hedgehog, it's just all this prickly stuff, but she's just softening around the edges, and it is changing.
And that's it, because we can't change anybody else. We can't change their thoughts, their actions, behaviours, anything. But by making those changes within ourselves, we do elicit changes in others. And it's quite incredible. In my work too, I find exactly the same. We have different approaches, but I think, our outcomes are very much the same, aren't they?
Yeah, can only start with who we are.
Exactly. It is about, as you say, loving ourselves and learning about ourselves, and being more aware of our values and core beliefs, as you said.
Yeah. And just respecting, giving yourself the respect and the love to do all of that.
Yes. Yeah. And if we don't like ourselves, how can we begin to do anything at all? Because we're so focused on how upset, angry or disappointed we are, then how on earth can we function in the world with love and understanding of others?
And how do we expect other people to like us?
No, we can't, can we?
We don't like ourselves.
Exactly.
We attract what we give out.
Oh, don't we just?
So
Absolutely.
when we give out that, that like and that self-love, and that's what we attract more of.
Totally agree with you. Yeah, and then we attract more of like-minded people within our lives, which is what we really want, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been absolutely lovely talking to you today. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it too as well. So, and how can people get in touch with you? They'd like to learn more. I'm going to put all the details in the show notes. But there may be somebody who's just listening while they're walking or driving the car. So can you just give some information about how people can get in touch with you and learn more?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to. And thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy talking to you too. So you can find me my website is www.suewinsbury.com, and it's Sue without an E, right, and Winsbury without a D. So it's SUWINSBURY. I'm on Facebook, so I'm quite happy for people to find me on Facebook. I have a business page and a personal page. I have a Facebook group for women, which is called Awaken the Woman Within. And that's all about sort of mind, body, soul, waking up the woman inside.
Great.
So very, very happy for people to come in and join me in there as well.
Fabulous. Okay. Thank you for that. And yes, thank you again. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights with us today.
Thank you, Wendy. It's been great.
I really hope you enjoyed the podcast, and you can find all the details of this episode in the show notes. If you've enjoyed it, then why not leave a review so that others can find the podcast more easily? You'll find all the details that I mentioned in the show notes, as well as links to my website, where you can find lots more information and links to other resources. My contact details are there too. If you'd like to receive my newsletter, which contains articles and my latest offers, then why not just email me? It's wendy@yourrelationshipspecialist.co.uk. Details are in the show notes.